right, yeah. So, as I said, Alexander Nicholi. I'm running for CD13 here. It's a three-way race between me, Paul, and Frank Pierce, who was here last time, not here this time. And just FYI, in case you don't know, District 13 is really close to here, 2 blocks north. Just north of Waite Avenue is CD13, so it's closer than you might think. So, I'm a generational Democrat, and that's by the heritage of the unions in the mines of West Virginia. My grandfather was a coal miner. My other grandfather was a truck stop mechanic, and his first cousin was a Democratic legislator in the state of West Virginia for about a quarter century. I spent my 20s living and breathing information technology as I was a self-taught informatics wonderkin since I was a teenager. Now, as I got into my 20s, I found out the hard way what was going on in the tech industry and how much of it's really just running more on fiat than it's running on substance. The computing part of the work had taken a backseat to mafia tactics and financial engineering and, quite frankly, racketeering practices that have been pioneered by several of these apartheid billionaires that you might be familiar with. So it makes sense then why tech has become an annoyance to us at best and a civil rights nightmare at worst, because they're not hiring people like me anymore. And this was somewhat recent, but I did just miss the last copter out of NAM, so to speak, with that. The corruption of the tech industry and its anti-democratic preeminence over our government is, to me, a typecast of a simpler problem that it turns out that we have faced before. And this is why I think that we're living in the second Gilded Age. So, we have a problem with brazen financial crimes that are just being committed shamelessly in broad daylight. And it's also caused a cultural issue of discouragement where people are afraid to speak up and people are afraid to actually fight this. So, but these problems aren't going to solve themselves, right? Some office holders and candidates seem to think that they can maybe make deals and, compromise. A lot of people talk about that. But in the light of the things going on these days with ICE and the financial breaking of the American people, I don't think so. And if history is anything to study, this is only going to be solved by confrontation. If we want to have lives of dignity and opportunity for everybody, then we have to reject and obstruct this political culture that we have that loves to make deals that the public always seems to lose out on. And this is as true for public policy as it is for foreign policy. I'm tired of having the goodwill to want to help the world when bureaucrats and businessmen seem to do an end run around us and make it seem like, well, if we make money and then that tarnishes our reputation and who cares what people think of America. It's the world police problem. So the answers for our problems are going to be like Roosevelt's, hard progressivism with tons of courage and conviction. For example, the way we handle sugar and food additives to me is criminal. I want to see us having an additive whitelist like what they have in Japan. In Japan, they have about 100 items or so. There's a list. And if it's not on that list, it's illegal to put it in foods and sell it to people in the general public. It's a very short list, and they've thought it through. We can't be sure of every novel substance that, chemists at Dow Chemical will invent and try to put in our stuff, and we don't know how bad it is. Our current system is what they call generally recognized as safe. And it's basically code for we don't know, but it looks good to us. We'll find out later through lawsuits. And that's not an exaggeration. It takes lawsuits to find these things out. So we should adopt the model from Japan. Same thing with sugar. Singapore has the model for us. This is easy. We can just steal their homework. They have a letter grading system. If it gets an F, you're not allowed to sell it, first of all. If it gets a D, like what Coca-Cola, for example, might get, you're not allowed to advertise it. And that's how it works in Singapore. They just put limits in. Very different from what we did, in the Michelle Obama days when I was in high school. And they wanted to kind of set a daily value limit for some reason on sugar, even though there is no daily value. It's not part of a diet. You don't need sugar to have a metabolism. So, whoops, lost it here for a sec. It happens. I also want us to restore things like the fairness doctrine of the FCC and extend it to revenue-bearing and print publications. And that's pretty ambitious because that's not an extent to which we went before with that. But if you're making money, if there's money changing hands, and these are opinions that are influencing elections, then you need to be fair about it. I think that that's a reasonable baseline to set for the American democracy. I also would like to restore, for example, shipping lane caps that the Interstate Commerce Commission used to have until the 1970s. This was another holdover from the progressive era, kind of like the Glass-Steagal Act, and it kept truckers in a living wage. I've seen reports of truckers who are essentially debt bonded to their vehicles because they can't afford it. They're stuck with it, part of the job. Companies like Cargill are doing this. And it's just because there's no limit. So we need to have limits like this. And, we don't have these things because we relented to what was at the time disingenuous and obscure interpretations of what's constitutional that really denigrates the spirit of that Constitution. This was, a lot of this really took off in the 80s, and I'm sure you guys all know who was going on in the 80s and what all that stuff was about. The big man, the movie star, everything is downstream of this from what I'm seeing. And we have to turn back on it. We have to stop entertaining all of these contrived conversations that are singularly motivated by power and greed. Let me give you another example. We don't negotiate with terrorists because they have usurped ultimate leverage over us, and any deal that we make would be coerced, right? So it's kind of the same problem in Congress. I challenge any aspiring deal maker to explain to me how we're not doing essentially the same thing on the part of the public. This is very disappointing to me, especially most recently where we're negotiating with the admin about this funding of DHS, and it's like, what kind of position are we in? This is not the negotiating spot that we need to be in. We're co-equal. We're supposed to be sharing this, 50-50 more or less. It's a two-party system. It doesn't look like it. It looks like Democrats are like a 20% of the country system, and we're not 20%. So it just doesn't work. I know that District 13 is a heavily gerrymandered place, but it is a place that I know from having grown up in it before I moved to Raleigh after getting married. But more than that, I think that it's the perfect typecast of the true American problem. People still trying their best to live, and they're getting marginalized for it over and over and over. And furthermore, I'd also like to highlight that one congressional seat is one vote for matters of national consequence. It's not inherently any less powerful than the 2nd district where many of us live, just because of how we elect it. So the other thing that I really want to tell you guys is the middle absolutely loves the smack that I'm talking about tech. And I don't see anyone who can do that as credibly in this race. And I know you guys want to vote for the one who has the best odds for beating Knott in the general. That's a powerful conversation piece that can get their attention inside of 15 seconds. Remember, attention spans are gone these days. We need 15 seconds. We need an immediate Peter Thiel, tech mob, we need to get them. And then, at that point, they can consider a Democrat to be their representative. It's really difficult, but we can do this. And so we have a unique opportunity here to punish this disenfranchisement caused by the gerrymandering. We just have to have the courage to see it through. So flipping this district, if we can do it, it'll set a serious example of hope for the American people. Then remind them that all is not yet lost to the likes of crypto-fascists and libertarian bankers from New York. It'll also set a higher baseline for healthier, more productive politics that can be absolutely contagious across the nation. I think this could be the coolest thing since the Arab Spring. So tonight I'm imploring you all to join me. Let's tell the others in this district about the tech mob. Let's get their votes, and let's try to have a conversation on our terms in Washington. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. I bet you all are just wondering, who is this